Professor, always good to see you. Obviously, this is going to be a big week for President Trump and the Epstein files. There's an email that came out in this latest batch that said that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Do you know what that means?
I have no idea. It's obviously a reference to the Sherlock Holmes story about the dog that didn't bark being very, very strong evidence. In this case, first of all, you have to believe what Epstein is saying is true. Why would suddenly anybody believe Epstein? Epstein had already said previously that his relationship with Trump had been terminated. So even if you could interpret that email to incriminate Trump in some way, it's Epstein's word. And Epstein's word seems at this point to be utterly worthless. In the same email, by the way, Epstein says that Trump is insane and that I'm close to being insane. And I'm so pleased that Epstein has said such negative things about me in his emails, because it corroborates what I've said, and that is I terminated my friendship with Epstein as soon as I learned that he was accused of all these terrible, terrible things. So, I'm hoping more and more and more emails come out, because if you're innocent like me, you want everything out there because it will exculpate you. If you're guilty, you can understand why people would want to suppress the emails.
There was a gentleman by the name of David Schoen, who apparently was also an attorney for Jeffrey Epstein. And he says this in a tweet. He said, if Jeffrey Epstein had any dirt on Donald Trump, he would have had great leverage in the criminal case against him at the time he died. The fact that he unequivocally said he had none ought to shut down the false claims otherwise. Do you agree with that?
No, I can go much further than that. I have personal experience with that. When I was debriefing Epstein and trying to get him the deal, which people thought was a sweetheart deal, Epstein thought was the worst deal in the world and called me a terrible lawyer, wouldn't pay my legal fees. But when I was debriefing him, I said to him, Jeffrey, if you have anything on anybody important, you have to tell me that, because I may be able to be using that to get you a better deal. And then I gave him a list of names of people. And in the list of names was Donald Trump. And he said to me personally, to my face, Alan, there's nothing I can give you about Trump that will help me get a better deal. So I have actually personal experience with that. It's not speculation in my case. Now, again, was Epstein telling the truth? When I have a client, I never believe anything they tell me, ever. I always have to get proof. They always tell me they're innocent. Some of them want to win the Nobel Prize. I don't accept what they tell me is true. I'm very, very skeptical. I want to be able to establish the truth through external evidence.
But using that same logic, if somebody came to you and said, oh, I've got something, if at that point Epstein said, I've got something on Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Billy Bob Thornton, who cares? You would have said, great, I can use that as leverage, right?
No, I would have first checked it out. I had a case a few years ago where a client of mine said that he had something on the mayor of Boston, and that would have gotten him off the hook completely. But I didn't believe him. And I did some checking. And I said to him, I don't believe you. I will not represent you if you continue to make assertions against the mayor of Boston, because it wasn't true. So I don't automatically take something a client tells me against somebody to the government. I have to do my own verification first.
Okay. I clearly did not take your course because I asked that in the wrong way. If Epstein says, I don't have anything on Trump, then you got to believe he doesn't have anything on Trump. There'd be no reason for him not to tell you that he had something at that point.
I think that's right. And
okay.
I believed it because I pressed him pretty hard, and I pressed him on other people. And he did tell me about one other person that he had things on. And I did provide information about that. So yes, about some people, no about other people.
Can you share who that person was?
Unfortunately.
What there was it? So of all the people that you named, only one person he had dirt on.
He had dirt on one person, and I found that out because I said to him at some point, I went through a list of names, and I said, is there anybody you can flip on you? And anybody we have to worry about can flip on you, which is lawyers do that all the time. And then I mentioned a number of names. And when I came to this name, he said, no, you don't have anything to worry about. I have so much on this guy. He couldn't possibly flip on me.
All right, guys, if you need a great night's sleep, do what I do every single night. Use Beam's Dream Powder. Right now, the ultimate cyber discount is available to my listeners only, 50% off, the best deal going that you are going to thank me for, because you're going to sleep better. You're going to stay asleep, wake up feeling refreshed. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer for 50% off for a very, very limited time during their cyber sale. Shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer, 50% off. Just as a layperson, help me understand this. Jeffrey Epstein is now passed. What is your legal obligation as far as things that he had told you or not?
Well, I still have lawyer-client privilege if he told me them in a lawyer-client confidential way. And so the privilege continues. And there's a case on this. Do you remember the man in the Clinton administration, I think, who committed suicide? One of his
Vince Foster.
Yeah. And his lawyer, a guy named Hamilton, had met with him the night before he killed himself. And they subpoenaed him to testify about what he had told him. And he refused because he was dead. And that case went up the courts. And the court said that the privilege, in most instances, relates to people who are passed as well.
Is the person that you mentioned, are they still a public figure?
No, he was never a public figure. He's a commercial figure, a very prominent commercial figure, not a public, but not an elected official, not a government official.
Okay. When these things come out, there's a lot of people that speculate that there's a lot of politicians, celebrities, financiers, mega donors. Do you think that that's an accurate assessment of what's about to happen?
Well, I can tell you that that the lawyer for the victims, a guy named Brad Edwards, who examined all of these cases, said he didn't think anything would come out against any prominent public figures. I can tell you this. I have held in my hand, like I'm holding this, I'm held in my hand an FBI 302, a summary of an interview that the FBI had with one of the victims. And the victim at that point gave, I think, 6 names of people she claimed she had sex with. And they all were redacted. Now, I know who they are because I did my investigation. So I know who X is, I know who Y is, I know who Z is. But the courts have refused to unredact those documents. Now, there's very good possibility that none of them were guilty, that they were falsely accused. The way I was falsely accused, as you remember, I was falsely accused, and then the woman admitted that she may have confused me with somebody else, misidentified me, and dropped all of her charges against me. So I've been completely exculpated, and I think everybody now understands I was just falsely accused and did nothing wrong. Now, it's possible that some of these people were also falsely accused. Some of their names have been made public. For example, I can tell you that one of the victims accused George Mitchell, the former majority leader, Bill Richardson, Ehud Barak, Jacques Cousteau's granddaughter. And I don't know whether any of these charges are false. Obviously also accused other people as well. So, I wrote a book called Guilt by Accusation, and we should never, ever allow accusation alone to determine a guilt. But I can tell you that names have been suppressed, and I know the names of the people who have been suppressed. So at one point I gave an interview, I think it was on your show, and I said, yeah, there is a list, but it's not Jeffrey Epstein's list. It's the FBI's list, and that has not been disclosed. I made a motion to have it disclosed because I know I'm not on the list. And if you have 6 people on the list and I'm not on it, that's pretty good evidence I didn't do anything wrong. So I wanted it disclosed, but it still hasn't been disclosed publicly.
Jeffrey Epstein's brother says that Bubba isn't Bill Clinton after the Epstein email about Trump claiming that Trump and Bubba are, so does Bill Clinton, you think, have anything to worry about?
I don't think so. Of course, Bill Clinton knew Jeffrey Epstein. I can attest again to that personally. I was at a dinner at Caroline Kennedy's house on Martha's Vineyard with Bill Clinton while he was president. And the Secret Service came over and handed Bill Clinton a phone, President Clinton a phone. And he walked away for about 15 minutes, and I thought it was some national security thing. And he came back and he held the phone. He said, somebody wants to say hello to you. And I got on the phone. It was Jeffrey Epstein, who obviously had been his lawyer. And he said, Alan, how are you? I'm glad you're having dinner with Bill. But, I can personally testify that Bill Clinton had a 15-minute phone call with Jeffrey Epstein. This was way, way, way before there were any accusations or any allegations. This was when Jeffrey Epstein was an academic, when he was holding conferences, Nobel Prize winners, university presidents, all of those people were there. And so I was part of that academic group, and Bill Clinton knew him and other people knew him. Dating is very important. The dates are very important. I terminated my relationship with him as a friend and an academic colleague the day I found out about the accusations. And by the way, the emails support that, because in the emails, he hates me. He says I'm marginally mentally ill. I'm a terrible lawyer. And, you know, the worse things Jeffrey Epstein says about me, the better, because it all corroborates everything I've said. In fact, I think I can say very clearly that the release of the emails proves that everything I said from day one has been true, which is why, in a self-serving way, I wanted all these emails out. The day I was accused, I asked the FBI to investigate me. I waived lawyer-client privilege. I waived privacy privilege. I wanted everything out. And everything that's come out has proved everything. If I had done anything wrong, the first person who would have accused me would have been Jeffrey Epstein. He was trying to get even furious at me because he thought I had made the worst deal ever that a lawyer ever made. This is the same deal that people call a sweetheart deal. So, you know, to one person, it's the best deal ever. To another person, it's the worst deal ever.
Do you think that deal, I know that's been questioned a lot. In retrospect, there's a lot of people who said that that was a sweetheart deal. And then there's people who say that's the best thing the government was ever going to get. Where do you come down years later now looking at that?
Well, there's no doubt about it. It's the best the government could have gotten, because I know that, because I was helping to negotiate it. The government had no proof that any young woman was transported in interstate commerce. All these young women lived in Palm Beach. They worked in West Palm Beach in what we'll call whack shacks, places where men would go to get, you know, happy endings. And so there was no federal case. And if the federal government had tried to indict him, they would have lost. They knew that. And that's why they made the deal to turn it over to the states. There was an open and shut case in state court, but an absolute loser in federal court. So the sweetheart deal was the best deal the government could get.
So one thing that's amazing to me is that every discussion, every piece of evidence, every email says Trump's not involved, right? And why? So what's the theory in your mind as to why they had been opposed to getting these out until last night?
Well, because I think we have guilt by accusation. If his name is mentioned, if there's anything, even if it doesn't show that he did anything wrong, people are going to assume the worst. The media assumes the worst about everybody. So I can understand why, as an initial instinct, don't let it go out. But I think wiser minds prevailed. And I'm very pleased that President Trump has now said he wants everything out there. I think that was the wise decision. I think that was the right decision. And I'm glad. And if it does come out, I don't think he's going to veto it. I think he's going to sign it. And hopefully everything will come out. Now, everything's not going to come out as a result of this legislation, because judges are still withholding material. For example, the FBI 302 that I mentioned with the names of these people that have been redacted. Government doesn't have that. That's been sealed by the court. My deposition, the deposition of the people, of the woman who accused me, those are all sealed. And, you know, you asked me the name of the person who Epstein says I have so much stuff on. That's in the sealed deposition. That's not going to come out as a result of this legislation. So I think it's very important that we also get judicial unsealing by the 3 federal judges that are now sealing material that I think are very significant.
So if you looked into the Alan Dershowitz crystal ball and just assume the legislation, let's just say in the next, who cares? Senate passes this, the president signs it in, everything gets released. 1 week from now, or just 7 days after the release, is America going to yawn and go, you got to be kidding me, that's all we got out of this? Or are we going to go, holy smokes?
No, you know, I've been called Nostra Dershowitz because my predictions generally have turned out to be absolutely correct. And so my prediction is we're not going to say, holy, you know, wow, look at all this stuff. And we're probably not going to yawn. Probably there'll be a few things in there that are embarrassing to people. We already know some stuff that came out have been embarrassing to people. But I don't think we're going to see any smoking gun in which we prove that a very prominent public figure had sex with a 15-year-old. I just don't think that's going to happen.
So there's a lot of questions about why Ghislaine Maxwell was transferred to this lower security prison. Based on your expertise, why do you think that happened?
But because she should have been in a low security prison anyway. Is she going to escape? Is she going to molest somebody? Of course not. The only reason she's in a high security prison is to impose extra punishment on her. The prison system is not supposed to decide where people go based on punishment. They're supposed to decide where people go on likelihood of flight, endangering other people. And she should have always been in a minimum security prison. So I understand why the government would say, in exchange for you being cooperative, we're going to put you in a better prison and give you somewhat more toilet paper. That's what she's getting, and everybody's complaining about that. She should never have been in a maximum security prison in the first place. She should have always been in a minimum security prison. That's the way prisoners are classified, based on their danger, likelihood of escape, and in her case, it's 0.
Should we believe what she has to say at this point?
I haven't really read what she says. She certainly is in a position to know a lot of things, but I have no idea because I haven't read. But everything everybody says should be corroborated.
Yeah.
Trust but verify. I think has to be what lawyers do. When I represent somebody, the first thing they say to me is, "I'm totally innocent and I should win the Nobel Prize." By the second day, the Nobel Prize is off the table. By the third day, well, I did this. I didn't do this, but I've done other things. And, by the fifth day, maybe they admit they did it. So, when you're a criminal lawyer, skepticism is the key to everything. Never believe anything unless it's proved.
Okay. Based on what you know, though, this petition that she's made for a reduction in sentence or a commutation, pardon from the president, should he even entertain that based on the crimes that she's been convicted of?
Yeah, I think so, because I think that she is serving Jeffrey Epstein's sentence. If Epstein had been alive, she wouldn't have been convicted. She would have been a witness against him. Or if she were convicted, she would have gotten 2 years or 3 years. She wouldn't have gotten 20 years. I think that because Epstein's dead, she has to serve Epstein's sentence. So I think it would be just and merciful to allow her a shorter prison term than what she got from the judge. That's my own personal view.
Right. So in other words, I just want to be clear on this. Somebody who covered up things and facilitated wouldn't have normally gotten the sentence that she did?
That's right. She would have normally gotten something more like 5 years, not 20. But because she was the stand-in for Jeffrey Epstein, I think she got the 20 years. That's my personal view based on my experience. Reasonable people could disagree about that.
You sued Virginia Giuffre for defamation.
That's right.
I believe you won that, correct?
No, she dropped the charges and admitted that she may have confused me with somebody else, may have misidentified me. Look, I never met this woman. I never heard of her. What happened was she met with a journalist, and the journalist named Sarah Churcher said, "Oh, we know Dershowitz didn't do anything wrong, but you should name him because he would sell books. He was Klaus von Bülow's lawyer." And so she puts me in her original book as somebody she did not have sex with, but somebody she saw at Jeffrey Epstein's house, which isn't even true. But we know the origin of the false accusation. And then she admitted that she may have misidentified me and confused me with somebody else. So as far as I'm concerned, as far as any reasonable person is concerned, I have been completely and totally vindicated, and largely because I wanted everything out there. A guilty person wouldn't say on day one. I wrote an op-ed for the Wall Street Journal entitled, "FBI, please investigate me. I am waiving my lawyer-client privilege. I'm waiving my privacy privilege. I want you to investigate me." Guilty people don't do that. And so I think everybody out there now knows that I was falsely accused, as I've said from day one.
Well, I got some potentially good news, really good news for you. I don't know if you know Jessica Reed Krause. She's the author of a Substack called House and Habit. And she said in a live event that she held last night that she has obtained a secret recording of David Boies, the attorney, in which Virginia admits that she's lied about you in the past, and that's coming out. So hopefully that gives you some comfort as well.
Well, that's great. I don't know anything about that. That's wonderful. I have a recording of David Boies acknowledging that I was innocent. And that has been produced in public record. And so I think everybody knows that I was not guilty. I don't think any rational person thinks I'm guilty, but I'm pleased that there is this evidence now that Virginia Giuffre has admitted, if it's true, that I didn't do anything wrong. As I say, I've never met her. I didn't know her. Yeah. Her name was completely a surprise to me when I heard about the false accusation. So everything is coming together and proving without any doubt that I was the victim of a false accusation.
You've obviously been through, you defended President Trump on the impeachment. You've had a lot of experience in this. Just from a strategic standpoint, the way the Democrats have played this, do you think that this is more of like a smear campaign to drum up like hate and opposition to the president? It seems like there's some Democrats that exchanged text with Epstein on how to hurt Trump. There's in one of the hearings, there's literally a representative from the Virgin Islands going back and forth with Epstein during his questioning of Michael Cohen. It seems like a political hit job.
Absolutely. I have no doubt about that. Look, when you have a situation like Jeffrey Epstein, everybody's going to try to exploit it for their own benefit. Look, Epstein has become the most famous schmuck in the modern history of the world. I mean, the guy is a real jerk and a nothing. And the idea that he has become, so influential. He is influencing attitudes in England toward the royalty. He is influencing the presidency of the United States, House of Representatives. The guy is a nothing, a nobody. And yet he's so influential because of these accusations that both parties see as benefiting them. I really do think that once this information comes out about me that you've said, by the way, what's the name of the woman who?
Jessica Reed Krause. She writes a Substack called House in Habit.
Krause, C-R-A-U-S?
Yep.
Okay. Once that all comes out, I would like to see this all put behind us. My family has suffered. My children suffered. My grandchildren suffered as a result of this false accusation. So I want people to know that there are two categories of victims out there. Obviously, the most serious victims, the victims who were victims of Epstein's abuse, but people who are falsely accused are victims as well. And our legal system doesn't allow guilt by accusation. And you have to be able to prove it. That's why when this information comes out, all the information should come out. Information about real victims, about victims that are not real victims. We know that there are some people who collected money from the Epstein estate who never even met Epstein. So that should be exposed as well. But we should be focusing on young girls who are real victims of Jeffrey Epstein and others, but we should also focus on the other victims as well.
There is a report out there that Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin was involved in a plot where prison staffers stole Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney-client emails and funneled them to him, and then he leaked them to the media. How big of a violation would something like that be?
Well, Jamie would have no excuse. He took my class in criminal law, and I'm sure he got a very, very good grade. Not only that, but I represented his father when his father was charged with crimes during the Vietnam period. So I go back with Jamie a long time. I find it hard to believe he would do anything improper. He's a very ethical man with whom I disagree on almost every major subject, but I think that I would be doubtful about him engaged in improper conduct.
Michael Wolff is, I don't know what you'd call media personality. I don't think he can qualify as an actual journalist. How concerning should people be about when they hear a source like him talk about Epstein? It seems like he is actually more of a Epstein PR rep than a journalist trying to provide information.
Well, I think the Supreme Court made a terrible mistake in New York Times versus Sullivan and other cases by basically saying anybody's a journalist who says they're a journalist. And we now see people just who have no journalistic integrity, no journalistic morals, no journalistic background, claiming privilege as journalists. And I think we have to start looking hard at who is a real journalist and what the rules should be involving journalism. I think the Supreme Court, and I have a case myself involving that against CNN, I do think that the Supreme Court should reconsider the breadth of New York Times versus Sullivan and how it allows almost anybody to defame and libel public figures. I think the courts have gone too far in protecting irresponsible media and not far enough in protecting the victims of media defamation.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I mean, I've seen it firsthand, and you saw this case with the BBC and this documentary where they really just edited everything that President Trump said to create a false narrative. They've apologized. President Trump says he wants $1 billion+ in a settlement. And it's funny because I read all these constitutional lawyer types that says, based on the Sullivan case, New York Times v. Sullivan, he won't get it. Why not?
Well, he probably won't if New York Times versus Sullivan remains the law. In my case, CNN had me saying things I said the opposite of. They claim, the CNN, that I said a president could do anything, even things that are illegal, when just the day before I said if a president does anything that constitutes treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors, he should be impeached. And CNN and the judge in my case said, after describing what CNN said, they said, Dershowitz said nothing of the sort, nothing of the sort. And yet the judge ruled for CNN saying I couldn't prove malice. How do I prove malice?
But that's so I've had the same. Yeah, I've had these same discussions where they'll say, okay, so what damage did that inflict on you? And I'll go, what are you talking about? They said that I did something. I didn't. Why can't, then that means that they can just say whatever they want. And I guess that's the question, right? So people have to understand that, because people will text me all the time, how come you're not suing so-and-so? And I'm like, because when you talk to your lawyer, they'll say exactly what you just said. Well, what's the damage to you? And I'll be like, because you can't prove how much did that hurt your reputation?
Worse, because I can prove damages. I can actually show damages. I can show that I lost speaking engagements. I can show specific damages. But they say I couldn't prove malice because I can't get myself into the mind of the people at CNN that got together to say, let's make Dershowitz say things that he didn't say. So we're taking that case up to the courts now, and we hope we will prevail. And it will be better for the entire American public to have a better balance between what the media is allowed to say and when the media maliciously and deliberately does what CNN did and what BBC did. And I think my case has probably been helped by the BBC case, because what the BBC did is exactly the same as what CNN did.
Yeah, first of all, just if you ever need an amicus brief from a guy like me, you just know that it's one text away, because I'm with you 100% on this.
Okay.
So
I'm with you. I'm good.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.